My arranged marriage partner is a pretty, sickly alpha. He's always acting cute and clingy toward me, but the second he gets his way, he refuses to admit it after we got married. He followed behind me every single day calling me wifey. He'd burrow into my bed, soften his voice, and whine, "Wifey, can you give me a little pheromone?" I'm seriously going to lose my mind. But later, when I got harassed, I watched him, face cold, snap someone's wrist in half, and I just stood there dumbfounded. Wait, sickly? This isn't sickly at all. This is full-on yander. My mom told me to come home, and that night I ended up locked in a room with an alpha. I was going to make him sleep on the floor, but then he looked at me with reddened eyes, all pitiful. His skin was pale to an unfair degree, and his face was so beautiful it didn't look human. So the words I was about to say got stuck in my throat. He coughed twice first and took the initiative. "I'm sorry. I didn't know something like this would happen either. You sleep on the bed. I'll make a pallet on the floor." How could I possibly let a sickly person sleep on the floor? Seeing he was already hugging a pillow and about to set it down, I hurriedly stopped him. "Wait. You sleep on the bed?" His eyes widened slightly. He froze in place like he hadn't expected me to say that. He lowered his head a little, looking conflicted. "Then what will you do?" I doubted he dared do anything, so I said, "We'll sleep on the bed together." But he shook his head like a rattle drum. "No. You're an Omega." His attitude somehow irritated me, so I simply grabbed him and yanked him onto the bed. With a bit of a nasty impulse, I lifted a hand to his face, teasing him. "So what? It's just sharing a bed. It doesn't mean anything has to happen. Or, are you telling me you've got ulterior motives?" And then I saw him give a small, careful nod. I short-circuited. For a moment I genuinely didn't know what expression I was supposed to make. While I was still stunned, he suddenly frowned. He leaned in and sniffed lightly, then reminded me, "Your pheromones are leaking." My heart lurched. Shit, it's my heat these past 2 days. Those suppressants I took earlier probably wore off. Gritting my teeth, I got up and pounded on the door, but there was no response at all from outside. I leaned against the door, restless and furious. Damn it, heat without suppressants. I had no idea how I was going to get through it. Above my head came that alpha's voice. "Are you okay?" I abruptly snapped back to my senses. Wasn't there a ready-made alpha right here? Thought rose up in my mind. I stood up, grabbed his collar, and yanked him into my arms. Resting my head on his shoulder, I said, "Here, aren't you thinking about me? My heat's here. I'm giving you a chance. Give me a temporary mark. But if you dare do anything extra, I will kill you." To make it sound threatening, I deliberately hardened my tone. His body went rigid. He looked at a loss when he spoke. His voice carried restraint, trembling slightly. "Is that something I can just endure if I want to? What the hell did they even teach you in your sex ed classes?" What was he asking that for? I was getting impatient. "Isn't it all just for sleeping with people? TCH, are you going to bite or not?" My bold, flippant attitude clearly shocked him. He didn't move for a long time. After what felt like ages, he clenched his jaw, as if he'd made some kind of decision. Then he pulled a bottle out of his pocket. My head was spinning. He had to take medicine to bite someone. I asked, "What is that?" He poured out a few tablets and actually chewed them up and swallowed them dry, his brows knit, his expression strained. Before I could even process it, he wrapped his arms around me tightly. He buried his face against my neck and inhaled deeply. It completely threw me. His voice turned a little cold, low, husky, brushing my ears. "If the alpha in here tonight were someone else, would you have let him do this too?" I felt even worse. My mind was fogging over. My craving for an alpha's pheromones had never been this intense. Anxious and angry, my tone picked up a restless edge. "Why are you talking so much, anyway? You're the one here tonight. Where are all these coming from?" He paused. After a beat, he let out a soft laugh, in a breath so light it was almost inaudible. He said, "You're right." Then the tip of his teeth pressed against the soft skin at the back of my neck. Even if it was only a temporary mark, it hurt way too much. I couldn't stop myself from struggling, trying to break free, but I was pinned down hard. He'd actually made me so weak I couldn't even wrestle free from a sickly guy. My words came out broken, sticky in a way that was ridiculous. And "Enough. Let go of me." I clung to him so badly he had no choice but to pause the injection of pheromones. He chuckled, then pressed a gentle kiss to my gland. I went stiff instantly, like I'd forgotten how to breathe. He leaned close to my ear and coaxed softly, "How could this be enough? Endure it a little. It'll make you feel better." His words seemed to have a strange effect. I really did stop struggling when the mark was finished. He held me in his arms. Our lips brushed lightly. I heard him murmur under his breath, "That medicine can only barely keep me from losing control." You really know how to test me. When I woke up the next day, my head still ached a little. The first thing that came into view was a face right next to mine. He looked even paler than before. I turned over and felt something beside me. When I picked it up, I realized it was alpha oral suppressants. There wasn't a single pill left inside. So he forced himself to hold out all night in front of an Omega in heat by taking medicine so he wouldn't lose control. As I was thinking that, he suddenly opened his eyes. I met his gaze without warning. Awkward. I cleared my throat. I'm sorry, my head wasn't very clear last night. If I said anything, don't take it to heart. He sat up, lowered his eyes faintly. His clothes were messy, like he'd been bullied even though he was an alpha. He seemed to misunderstand something. His eye corners reddened, as if he might cry when he spoke. His voice was hoarse. It's fine. Even if you hadn't said that, I wouldn't have done anything. I know you don't want to be with me for some reason. I felt a little moved. He quietly straightened his clothes, then said in a very small voice, I'll go first. There was a hint of reluctance in it. Damn it. How could an alpha be this good at acting cute? Later, I found out he was my arranged marriage partner, Keith Smith. Even if it was an arranged marriage, since my mom knows I can't stand being wronged, she still asked my opinion about marrying him. What do you think? I thought back to everything that happened that night. Like I was possessed, I said. It's okay, I guess. My mom couldn't quite believe it. She immediately hugged me and planted an excited kiss on my cheek. That's wonderful, Alex Perry. You know, I almost thought you'd never get married. Now Alex down there can finally rest easy. I shoved her away in disgust. I was surprised myself, too. Maybe I'd lost my mind. We'd only met once, yet it felt like I'd been hexed. The wedding day came quickly. That night, the bedroom door opened, a fluffy head peeked. And first, he looked around before stepping into the room, like a timid cat. Thinking that, I couldn't help letting out a quiet laugh. He must have heard me. He immediately went stiff and awkward, moving his hands and feet like they belonged to someone else. Not daring to look at me when he undressed, his fingers trembled on a button for ages before he managed to undo it. I couldn't stand watching anymore and reached out to help. His face flushed. He gave me a light push, murmured thanks, then bolted into the bathroom like he was fleeing. I was helpless. Did my hand trigger some kind of mechanism or what? When Keith came out of the bathroom, I was taking off my clothes. I hadn't taken much off, just my shirt, but the moment he saw, he snapped his head away. I laughed in exasperation, tossed the shirt aside, grabbed his chin, and forced him to look at me. I asked. My upper body could be on TV without needing a censor. Bar what? You can't look. He bit his lip and simply closed his eyes. I leaned close to his ear and said on purpose, if you don't open your eyes, then on our wedding night you can stay in an empty bed all by yourself. Only then did he panic. He opened his eyes and grabbed my arm. Don't. I kind of liked that reaction. I patted his head, brushed his arm aside, and swaggered into the bathroom. After my shower, I sat next to Keith, drying my hair. I felt like I was being watched. When I turned my head, I caught him staring at my neck. Busted. He immediately lowered his head. It was kind of funny. I leaned closer, teasing him. Haven't you already bitten the spot? After I said it, I studied him more carefully. Then I realized his eyes were wet, and a tear had just slid down. I froze, utterly baffled. You don't have to bottom. What are you crying for? He shook his head. It's not because of that. I was even more confused. Then why? Who knew he'd bite his lip and drop a bombshell? It's because seeing you feels too good. I blanked, huh? No bro, just looking at me makes you feel that good. Then if we're together every day from now on, won't you die of bliss? My head started to hurt. I pressed a hand to my forehead and asked, do you really like me that much? He nodded, and another line of tears slipped down. Keith carefully reached for my hand. His voice was timid, almost trembling. Don't go. It's not that I can't bear to look at you. I'm afraid I won't be able to hold back. And you don't want to do anything with me. My head hurt even more listening to him. I was about to say something when he somehow produced another bottle out of nowhere. When I looked closely, it was again alpha oral suppressants. I was done. Truly, I surrendered. He tipped out a few pills, ready to feed them into his mouth. Don't worry, I'll restrain myself. I prepared a lot of medicine today. A nameless fire surged straight up into my chest with one swing of my hand. I slapped the bottle flying. My tone turned sharp. Eat at this rate. With that pathetic body of yours, you'll eat yourself to death and leave me a widow. Aren't you the one who's so good at acting cute? Why are you chickening out now? He clutched the pills in his palm, looking helpless and lost. I wasn't acting cute. I pried his fingers open, tossed the pills away too, then grabbed his shoulders, half furious and half laughing. Why do you always take my threats seriously? Go where? Huh, if I really didn't want this, I never would have agreed to marry you from the time I was a kid until now. Nobody's ever been able to force me. Only then did his tears finally stop. The corners of his eyes were red so pitiful it made my chest ache. Before he could even react, I lowered my head and took a deep sniff at his gland. It hit me all at once. My thoughts instantly went feral. Keith panicked. Don't. I ignored him completely, put some strength into it, and pushed him down, tugging at the tie of his robe. I drawled with teasing cruelty. Acting cute won't work. I'm doing it anyway. If you weren't an alpha, it wouldn't have to be this much trouble. I'm the one who gets waited on. This is really you getting off easy. As I spoke, I released my own pheromones. Under their influence, he couldn't suppress himself anymore. Our scents tangled together, flooding the entire room. When I woke up the next day, my head felt like it was splitting. The person beside me clung to me like an octopus, limbs wrapped around my body. I only moved a little and I woke him up. He immediately tightened his arms around me. Last night it had been the same. Whenever I showed even the slightest intention of leaving, he would snap awake at once, like he turned into someone else. Revealing that alpha dominance carved into his bones, he hurried to say, "Wifey, don't go. I didn't listen to you last night. Are you mad at me?" "I'm sorry." I really couldn't control myself then. My face was burning hot, helpless. My voice came out a little hoarse. "It's not because of that. Don't overthink it. It's time to get up." But he clung to me even tighter, face buried against my chest. His voice was muffled with a sleepy nasal sound. His eyes wouldn't even open properly. "Don't. I want to sleep a little longer, wifey. Let me hug you a bit more, okay?" Honestly, how did he know I was weak to exactly this? I could only rub his head. "Fine, all right. But only 1 more hour. And you're an alpha. Cut down on the babying." He looked puzzled. "I'm not acting cute." Though see, he acts cute, and the moment it works, he denies it, because of him. I fell asleep again. When I woke up groggy, I found him doing something not so innocent to me. The second I opened my eyes, his lips were just lifting from my cheek. Caught red-handed, he immediately sprang away like a startled rabbit. 3 meters from me in an instant, I touched the spot he kissed. Amused, I asked, "If you want to kiss me, why are you being so sneaky? You kiss me, and then run. Aren't you a coward?" His pale face finally had a hint of color, which somehow made me want to bully him, so I did. I flipped back the blanket and pinned him in the corner against the wall. Cradling his face in my hand, I said, "Next time you want to kiss, beg me. I'll let you kiss me until you're satisfied." Then I leaned in and kissed those lips. He gave to perfunctory little pushes, then went obediently still. Seriously, he clearly liked it. When the kiss ended, our breaths were tangled together. He panted softly, but what he said next made me freeze. "Wifey, you're amazing." I tried to find even a trace of teasing on his face, but he only looked at me shyly. Now I was the one feeling embarrassed. The atmosphere was turning dangerously delicate when he suddenly remembered something. His expression dimmed. Jealousy, uncontrollable, colored his voice. "Your kissing is so good. You must be really experienced, right?" I was literally kissing at random, and if we were talking about taking the lead, he'd been the one who became proactive halfway through. I flicked his forehead. "Keep thinking nonsense and I'll knock your head off. It's just you, no one else." The moment I said that, the clouds on his face vanished. Smiling, he leaned in and brushed a quick kiss to my cheek, then ran again. I touched the spot he'd kissed, amused. After a quick wash-up, I went downstairs. From far away, I heard Keith speaking to someone. He doesn't like heavy flavors. Don't make anything too intense. He likes snacks. Prepare more varieties and keep them in the drawer from now on. In this house, other than me, what he says carries the most weight. Don't let me find out any of you are disrespectful to him. I was surprised. My preferences could be investigated, but he even knew my little habit of liking snacks. And I'd only heard this part. Who knew how much he'd already said before that? That tone was completely different from how he spoke to me. It carried an oppressive force that brooked no refusal. I walked up to him in a daze. The second he noticed me, he immediately reverted to the Keith I knew. "Wifey, you're down. How is it? Are you hungry?" I already told them to start cooking. It'll be ready soon. For some reason, the servant beside him looked like they'd seen a ghost. My mind was full of question marks. I genuinely couldn't tell which one was the real him anymore. At noon, the sunlight made me drowsy and soft, half asleep, half awake, a body pressed close. I opened my eyes and saw a fluffy head, possessed by some impulse. I reached out and ruffled his hair. Keith looked up at me, apologetic. "Sorry, I woke you." I shook my head. "It's fine. I wasn't really asleep." He buried his head against my chest and nuzzled, like a clingy cat. I laughed. You really like taking advantage of me. Hut, his voice was muffled. Because I like you so much. This morning at work, you were all I could think about. I really wanted to smell my wifey. I suddenly felt a little shy. But he had to keep acting cute, his tone full of expectation. Wifey, can you give me a little pheromone? I'm really going to lose my mind. I was the one about to lose my mind. Unable to refuse, I released just a tiny bit of pheromone. He immediately buried his face at my neck, greedily drinking it in, at the worst possible moment. The image of him earlier ordering the servants around flashed through my mind. I shook my head lightly. Whatever. As long as he's willing to put in the effort for me. That's enough. I realized Keith understood me far more than I'd imagined. For example, he was ridiculously good at pleasing me. The moment he got home every day, he'd stick to me like glue, following behind me, no matter what I did. He'd praise me. Wifey is amazing. Sometimes I'd get embarrassed and argue back. He'd look at me very seriously and say, but wifey is amazing. Every day, I get my face fully melted by him. I usually went to bed early at night. After he finished handling his tasks, he'd climb into bed in the least dignified way. He'd lift one corner of the blanket and quietly wriggle inside. When I opened my eyes, there would be a fluffy head buried against my chest. Sometimes he'd even beg pitifully for a bit of pheromone. God, who's the Omega here? And after living with Keith for a while, I realized his complexion seemed a lot better, though his skin was still very pale. His face was the kind of pretty, delicate beauty, but his body was solid as hell. Sometimes, looking at my own body with zero signs of working out, I'd start to wonder who the sickly one really was. That day, Keith suddenly said he wanted to take me to a banquet. Once we got there, he kept his arm linked through mine, like he was afraid I'd leave him for even a second. Every time we met someone, he'd smile and introduce me. This is my wifey. But for some reason, after they saw his smile, every single one of them looked like their scalp was crawling when people flattered him. It even felt a little forced, like he was smiling through it. It left me genuinely confused. Halfway through, I wanted to use the restroom. Keith said he wanted to go with me. When I pictured that scene, it really was like to elementary school. Kids holding hands to go to the bathroom, so I refused firmly. He had no choice but to let me go. Though clearly unwilling, in a small, pleading voice, he acted cute again. Then you have to come back quickly. Okay, I sighed, amused despite myself, and promised him. All right, I'll be right back. In an out quick strike, shaking, my hands dry as I came out of the restroom, I scanned for Keith. But I hadn't taken more than a few steps when a greasy, middle-aged alpha blocked my path. His hair looked like it had 3 pounds of gel in it, and he seemed drunk off his ass. His words were light and lewd, his posture intimate in the grossest way. Hey, cutie, you here alone? I got goosebumps from sheer disgust. There were too many people around. I didn't want to make a scene. Forcing my temper down, I explained. I came with my partner. Then I tried to step around him, but he seemed to think it was just an excuse I'd made up to avoid being pestered. He grabbed my arm and wouldn't shut up. I've got my eye on you. That's giving you face. You know who I am. I ground my teeth, a violent urge surging up inside me. I was 1 second away from swinging when suddenly, someone clamped down on his wrist. Hard, he screamed immediately from the pain. He was about to blow up until he looked up and saw who it was. And with a thud, he dropped to his knees. It was Keith. His expression was icy. Anger blazed in his eyes. Impossible to miss. It was so sharp it made me shiver. Maybe he noticed my reaction, because he quickly curved his lips into a smile, which only made him look more terrifying. The people nearby noticed what was happening and immediately lowered their voices. Someone whispered, "What's going on? Looks like this guy got drunk and flirted with President Smith's wife. Look at President Smith's face. He looks like he's about to kill someone. He's got a death wish. He's done." For hearing that, the man's face turned white on the spot. He begged, "President Smith, I didn't mean it. I was blind. I had dog eyes. Please, your magnanimous spare my life." Keith kept smiling and forcibly hauled him up. He was smiling, but his words were cold enough to frost over. "I never said I was going to kill you. How about this? I don't want to scare my wife. You apologize to my wife first, and then we can talk." Slowly, later, instantly, people around us understood what he meant. They murmured to each other, "Looks like President Smith plans to deal with him." Slowly afterward, the man's face was smeared with snot and tears. He apologized to me over and over, even slapping himself, begging for forgiveness. Keith just stood to the side, watching with a pleasant smile. This version of him felt so unfamiliar it made my stomach twist. I couldn't stand it anymore and told the man to shut up. Then I watched him get dragged away. Keith pulled me into his arms, patting my back, coaxing gently, "Wifey, did I scare you?" "It's okay," He'll never appear in front of you to bother you again. My throat felt clogged, words stuck behind something heavy in the end. I said nothing. That night, Keith didn't come burrowing into my bed. Instead, he went out. Before he left, he even told me to sleep well. I pressed my lips together. A strange premonition kept gnawing at me. I couldn't help it. I followed him. Quietly trailing behind, he didn't go far, just to a secluded corner at the back of the large garden. I hid nearby, watching carefully. A group of men in black were holding the man from the banquet. Keith put on gloves and lightly patted the man's face. His voice held ice. "You don't recognize my wife, Do you remember clearly now?" The man nodded frantically. Keith grabbed the man's hand again and asked, "Which hand did you touch him with?" "I remember, it was this one, right?" The man's voice shook. "Why you? What are you going to do?" Keith's tone was casual, as if he were dealing with some irrelevant object. "Is it hard to guess? People only remember when they're taught a lesson with something real. And pain is the most effective kind. Of course I'm going to make sure you remember so you won't dare do it again." The next second, the man let out a scream. That wrist he'd probably broken it, howling in pain. The man begged, "I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. I swear I'll never do it again. If I had known he was the antidote you've been looking for, even if you gave me 10 guts, I wouldn't have dared to mess with him." Antidote. While I was still processing that, Keith spoke again. "You really think that sounds convincing?" I couldn't watch anymore. I burst out, grabbed Keith, and shouted, "Stop it now." He looked a little surprised at my sudden appearance. He released the man, took off his gloves, and tossed them aside. His voice turned gentle, completely different from a second ago. "It's cold at night. Why are you out here?" "I'm just handling a small matter. I'll be back soon." Small matter. He even tried to pull me into a hug. I avoided him, sulking. Only now did I realize I'd never truly known him at all. I stared into his eyes and asked. He said, "I'm your antidote." "What does that mean?" Keith fell silent. After a long beat, he grabbed my arm, trying to change the subject. "Let's go back first." I yanked myself free hard. My tone turned icy. "I'm not leaving without an explanation. If you won't tell me, I'll ask him." Keith didn't speak, but his gaze sank darker. Anger surged up, and I shoved past him, walking to the man. Realizing he'd caused trouble, the man lowered his head, refusing to look at me, his lips clamped tight. I pinched his chin, putting some force into it. "You can't hide this from me forever. I'm going to know sooner or later. Look at the situation. If you tell me now, I might be able to plead for you. Otherwise, I can't guarantee what your ending will be." Truthfully, even if he didn't tell me, I would have pleaded. For him anyway, violence isn't the answer. The man wavered, but he was still afraid of Keith. His eyes flicked over, then he shrank violently back. I turned to look. Keith's expression looked like he wanted to kill someone. I shot him a fierce glare. He immediately softened just like that. Seeing it, the man finally spoke. Trembling, "President Smith has an illness. He's had it since he was in the womb. He can't sense the pheromones of low compatibility, omegas, and during his rut he can only rely on oral suppressants that seriously damage his body. But your compatibility with President Smith is a shocking 100%. To put it bluntly, you're his best antidote." My emotions tangled into a mess. I couldn't even be angry, only sad. Why couldn't he just tell me? I would have understood as long as he acted cute a little more. I would have given him pheromones. I would have given him kisses. I would have given him hugs. I could have met all of it. So why wrap himself up so tightly? Did he still not trust me enough? I turned to Keith. Let him go. Keith clearly didn't want to. But seeing how resolute I was, he signaled his men to release him. The man was freed. He scrambled away, crawling and stumbling as he ran. Keith looked at me, like he wanted to say something, but I didn't give him the chance. I grabbed his arm and dragged him back inside. He followed obediently, like a kid who'd done something wrong. The moment we stepped through the door, I let go. He panicked, reaching for me, but I turned and went upstairs without looking back. He didn't seem to understand my attitude. He followed after me, trying to explain. "Wifey, listen to me. I didn't mean to hide it from you." I turned around, half angry and half laughing. "Do you think I'm only mad that you hid it? You know me so well, but I don't even know what the real you is like. Which you is the real one? Is everything you do just an act to please me so you can treat your illness?" He was silent for a long time. Before my patience ran out, he finally spoke. "You don't need to know. You only need to know I'll always treat you well. Yes, there is an element of pretending, but it isn't for the illness. I truly like you. Please believe me." I let out a cold laugh. "Keith, aren't you tired? I don't need your pretending if you won't even let me understand your heart. What am I supposed to believe?" After I said that, I quickened my pace. I reached the bedroom, slammed the door shut, and locked it. If you really like me, if you really care, then prove it to me. All I need is for you to be willing to open your heart to me, and then, I truly won't hold anything against you anymore. For days, I forced myself not to pay attention to Keith. And he maybe because he felt guilty didn't come to look for me either. I'd gotten used to sleeping in his arms, and these past few days, with him not burrowing into my bed at night, I actually started getting insomnia. While we ate, I watched him in secret. He seemed to be planning something. I'd overheard him on the phone before, saying something about asset distribution, but I hadn't caught it clearly still. Alarm bells started going off in my head. Was I too harsh that day? Did he feel sorry for me and decide he should divorce me? Asterisk, the more I thought about it, the more it felt exactly like that. I wanted him to willingly show me his heart. I didn't want him to leave me. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I tested the waters. So, have you ever thought about divorce? He lifted his eyes slightly, expression calm. He considered it for a moment, then answered, that's not something I've thought about. Great, now he has. Keith finished eating, dabbed at his mouth and said, I'm going to the company. He didn't say anything else, cold, distant. Maybe he really didn't want me to know him. The moment I tried to touch and explore what was inside him, he would turn into a hedgehog bristling with spikes to protect himself. But I wouldn't hurt him. I wouldn't abandon him. That day, after Keith left, I noticed a key on the floor. It didn't look like a house key. And suddenly I remembered when I'd wandered around this place before. There was a locked room on the 3rd floor. It wasn't exactly decent of me, but I still crept upstairs and decided to try it. I slid the key into the lock. The door opened. Slowly, I walked inside, felt for the switch, and turned on the light. The room brightened and the sight inside stopped me cold. Clothes I'd thrown away. A pen I'd lost. All kinds of things I discarded or misplaced were here, gathered together. On the wall, photos and papers were pinned up. I stepped closer and my shock deepened. They were photos of me, starting from middle school. One was of me after a fight with a friend, hiding on the way home, secretly crying. Beside it, there were handwritten notes. This is the antidote Mom found for me. But can he really save me? He looked so sad, so fragile. Maybe I should tell Mom to stop interfering. There was one from high school, me winning a prize for an essay, standing on stage to accept it. More notes beside it. I've been observing him for years. He smiled so happily today. Does this really make him that happy? I don't understand it. But if he's happy, I'm happy too. There was one from college when I'd just fallen in love, going on a date with my first boyfriend. This time the annotation was in red ink. Messy and furious. I hate him being with someone else. Mom said it's because I like him too much. So I don't want him to belong to anyone else. I think she's right. He can only be mine. I remembered. That boyfriend had broken up with me after only 3 days. I thought it was my fault and felt awful for a long time. Now that I was seeing this, it was probably Keith's doing. My emotions tangled. The most recent photo was from Lunar New Year. I was drunk, squatting by the roadside outside my house, wailing like a ghost. The note was brief, dummy. I found a pen in the room and wrote a retort beside it. You're the dummy. He'd been watching me for at least 10 years, secretly angry, secretly jealous. He cared so much, and these past 2 days he'd still been playing dumb with me. I finished writing and tossed the pen aside. Then, the moment I turned my head, I nearly jumped out of my skin. Keith stood behind me like a ghost. I had no idea when he'd appeared. I hadn't even heard footsteps. I was weirdly nervous. Why are you back so suddenly? He didn't answer. Instead, he said, out of nowhere, now you know the real me. I froze. He continued. I'm extreme, jealous. I can't understand other people's joys and sorrows. My daily task is to pretend to be a normal person. That's who I am now, you know. Only then did I realize. How could he have made such a low-level mistake? Letting me see him handle the man in the garden, dropping the key on purpose, letting me find it. He hadn't been keeping me from knowing him. This was his way of testing my reaction. If I could accept it, he'd lay himself open. If I couldn't, he'd make other plans. A chill crawled up my spine. He was still too smart. It was true. If I'd found this room before, I would have panicked. I would have been scared. But now, I was strangely calm, almost happy, even excited. He'd known me far earlier than I'd ever imagined. He cared about me far more than I'd ever imagined. I looked at him, let out a soft laugh and said, that's it. I thought it'd be something huge. Are you seriously that scared? He stared at me, surprised. Then he said in a low voice, people like me are strange. Aren't you afraid? I laughed and cursed lightly. Dummy, the word he'd used for me. I handed it right back. Keith looked even more lost. I went on, do you know, you're actually really cute. Of course, I'm not afraid. I like it when you care about me. When you get nervous over me, you can be bolder. Because as long as you act cute even a little, I can't hold anything against you. I left. I'm standing there, stunned, and went downstairs. During the day, I went out to have fun. At night, I came home ready to sleep only to find the blanket oddly puffed up, confused. I lifted it and froze. Keith was inside. His pajama buttons were undone a few notches, exposing a sheet of snow-white chest. His hair was fluffy and soft. His eyes were wet. He peeked at me cautiously, then bit his lip and squeezed his eyes shut. I burst out laughing. What? You're trying a beauty trap? He shook his head and explained. No. I just really wanted to smell you, and you weren't home. So I thought maybe there'd be a little bit left in the blankets. Sorry, my mouth twitched, honestly. If he'd just called me, even if my legs were broken, I would have crawled home. After a long moment, maybe because I wasn't speaking and I wasn't moving, he opened his eyes again. He took my hand and pressed a light kiss to the back of it. In a soft voice, he begged, Wifey, I was wrong. From now on, I won't hide anything from you. If I want something, I'll ask you. Forgive me, please. I went stiff, my face heated up. I'd forgiven him ages ago, but I added conditions anyway. Then don't be so violent anymore. Stop snapping people's wrists at the drop of a hat. Whatever it is, talk to me first. He nodded quickly. Then, carefully, he asked. Then wifey, forgive me now. I deliberately teased him. I turned my head away. I don't know, he panicked. He yanked me down in one motion. I fell onto the bed and he wrapped me into his arms. He said, that day I was too angry. The moment I saw him touch you, I got so mad I wanted to go insane. I'll be good. I won't lose my temper anymore, I swear. Without you, my world is boring. All these years, I've treated you as the reason I keep living. Wifey, I'm begging you. Forgive me. That was when I truly couldn't hold out anymore. These past few days had already been torture. My defenses crumbled instantly, and I hurried to soothe him. All right. I'm not mad anymore. Only then did he seem to relax. He rubbed his head against the hollow of my neck. I was burning up. He noticed too, and asked on his own. Wifey, you're so hot. Let me help you. I closed my eyes and gave a tiny Maybe because he had me his antidote. His body seemed to be getting better and better. In the morning, I was sore all over and couldn't get up. He used a warm towel to gently wipe away the tear stains on my face, bit by bit. He kept apologizing. Sorry, I couldn't hold back. I just love wifey sent too much. My face was on fire. In a small voice, I said, stop saying it. He nodded, shut up, and quietly kept wiping me clean. Being waited on like that, I drifted off again, hazy and half asleep. When I woke up again, I felt much better. I went downstairs, planning to eat something, but I found Keith bustling around in the kitchen. He carried dishes to the table, saw me, and smiled. Wifey, you're awake. You must be hungry. Come sit and eat. Warmth pooled in my chest. Food could wait. I leaned in first and kissed his cheek. He went blank, flustered. Wifey, what is it? I shook my head. Nothing. Just, I like you so much. I want to be with you forever.